Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Well, hello there. Welcome back.
So, guys, please do subscribe. Both channels, EEARTS and Evolutionary Energy Arts. And we might as well thank our Patreons for their support while we can. And also those that are supporting us over at Ko-Fi as the guys go out to do their thing.
Yes.
Ah, the joys of a 690 square foot tiny house on a tiny little lot with 200-pound puppies.
Yes. The two Dobermans with the great white Pahana who rules them both. Yes, she does. She kind of dictates where they go, why they go, and she teaches them. It's great fun around here.
Yes, Sassy the Shih Tzu is absolutely the Doberman whisperer.
She is. She knows things, you guys. She's a little mystery.
So we want to talk about one of our favorite topics, and in reality, when we're not working with people on, whether it's energy work, the ascension process, help with getting through the ascension process, spiritual coaching, Cindy is usually delving deep into Vedic astrology, and I'm delving deep into a few other interests as well as doing the research that we do. And we've talked about recently the fact that, it's interesting. You'll find that a lot of scientists will agree that what we are experiencing is basically a holographic projection. It is a holographic universe in nature, and everything we're looking at is not necessarily as real as it appears, in the sense that we are consciousness having a human experience. And this is, again, a temporary experience as a human. So, you might think that you're a human, and you are a human for the time being, but you're actually much more than that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're all different kinds of entities, all different kinds of beings, your different experiences. This life is it's a journey, it's a path, and we get to keep whatever we gain. We get to keep that with us, and we get to utilize that wherever we go. So part of our spiritual journey is gaining experiences, gaining that information that we can store away in our energy field to bring back up at a later time, to try that out, to see how it feels, to revisit it once again.
I can't remember his name. Do you remember this one gentleman that we've been listening to a little bit more lately? I discovered him a long time ago.
The nice guy with the bald head?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Theo something. Anyway, this guy I'm going to remember and share in a future video. He's a genius.
He is.
He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant guy, and lately he's awakened and sees what's going down in the world at large. So he's talking a lot about that, but when he's not talking about that, he's talking quantum physics, science, and philosophy on the deepest levels. And it's interesting too, because he'll tell you that Vedantic thought is perhaps the deepest, most accurate, in his opinion, way at viewing the universe and our reality as a whole. And he's fascinating to listen to. He goes down great rabbit holes. Makes a lot of sense to me, per se, and maybe that's why I just find him so entertaining. Also because he doesn't take himself too seriously, yet he does have a bit of an ego, but a lot of geniuses will have some of an ego. He's funny. And again, Vedanta, the Sanatana Dharma, this way at looking from the Eastern traditions, especially from what we would recognize as Hinduism, of which there's many different facets, again, just like there is thousands of varieties of Christianity, per se. And the reality is, again, if we go back to the origins of Christianity, there were still so many more that were all kind of wiped away and, swept under the rug, or buried in a deep ditch, or burned in a funeral pyre, if you want to be really accurate, or drowned in oil, or drawn and quartered. We could go on and get a little bit more graphic as we go. As again, we've shared that with you guys. But this reality that we find ourselves in it, is again a holographic projection of sorts. And when we look at astrology, well, why does astrology work? And especially, why does Vedic astrology work? Well, again, Vedic astrology is different from Western astrology in a couple of points. But, Cindy will share with us one of the most key and obvious things.
I could never really get into Western astrology. There was always just something felt a little bit off. And when I started to understand Vedic astrology, and I realized, well, what's the difference? And that's the 23.5 degree tilt of the earth that exists in Vedic astrology that does not exist in Western astrology. And I thought, for the life of me, why would you even put something together and not include the tilt of the earth? That is like the most important thing. That's what I thought. So after I realized that and had my own first reading, I was bought, sold, and paid for. Boy, I had to learn to understand myself. And yes, this is that gentleman that is so fascinating, and he has some amazing vocabulary words. Yes, he does talk over my head, but there's something about him that my energy enjoys. He's just an enjoyable person, and there is things that he says in there that I do appreciate. A lot of things.
Yeah, so even if you're not speaking the same language, you can get things, and we don't really recommend a ton of channels, but and again, he's unique. Some people might be offended by him, and some people might just find him hilarious and interesting. So his name is Ken. He translates ancient Pali, Greek, and is a former Russian translator. He writes books and articles on metaphysics, specifically Neoplatonic, the earliest Pythagorean, emanationism, earliest Buddhist and Upanishadic philosophy as well, extensively reviewed photographic equipment, etc. He's also a land speculator. He's actually he's very, very honest. I mean, he's telling us about his woes. And one of the things he did recently is he sold everything that's not nailed down, as he said, and he's bought land because he thinks land is gold. And land is and again, this is a very intelligent guy. He understands that's the Bill Gates philosophy. Why is Bill buying all this land? And here we are going off tangent on a Vedic astrology video, but I want to also kind of preface it by saying that he will tell you that really the truth of the reality is very much in line with what we get from the Vedic scriptures and what we get from the Vedantic tradition, the Sanatana Dharma. And again, quantum physics is something that's, right up his alley, and it's just very, very obvious, as he was just stating about, how this is a holographic projection, and I just thought I would share that with you. But again, well, why would this work? Well, this is part of the programming of this holographic reality. It's a program. There is a program, and everything is programmed into this. So when we look at the creator, in some ways you could say, the creator of this universe is an amazing programmer. Absolutely, that's what he's doing. But he's actually doing it just from pure thought. But we don't actually know all the mechanics of what's going on. So astrology is the study of?
Yes, it's the study of light and how that light hits our body, what it compels us to do. It's this energy force that we react and act upon. So sages long ago took the time to write down this information and check the stars, look at the places of the stars to get an understanding of what people were feeling, what the effects were. And this is why we also talk a lot about the Pluto return, because this is a force that is going to make everything change. The destiny is things are going to be different. The way we do things are going to be way different. But what do we have control over? We have control over how we get to that destiny, and that's a big part of astrology.
Absolutely. As you can see, like in this little chart where you see the 12 signs. Oh, 12 signs, 12 apostles, 12 tribes of Israel. You know, we could go on and on through the 12s. They're all over the place. And again, it's all part of that structure and programming. And so, you know, 4 times 3 is 12. And yet we could look numerologically and say, you know, 4 is manifestation, 3 is divinity, and, you know, 12, 1 plus 2 comes back to 3, which is divinity. But we see the elements here as well: fire, earth, air, and water. Of course, there's 5 elements in Chinese philosophy. There's also the Akashic, the ether, so to speak. You know, there's different words and terms, different flavors, but in all the mystical traditions, this is what we find. There is a commonality there. And it's understanding the programming. It's that simple. You understand the programming of this matrix. Every single star is a conscious being. And again, if we look like a spirit orb when we're out of the body, can you imagine the consciousness that's encased in one of these gigantic stars? What have they learned? What do they know? And what will they share with us? That's the question. Well, we could determine a lot by looking at the positions of the stars and their interaction in our charts. Again, it's all about light and light interacting with other light. So when you look at your Vedic astrology chart, we start over here. This is our first house.
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, our first house is our everything. It's who we are. It's what we're about. It's, you know, the main line to everything. It's how we relate to everything in our life. So the first house, of course, one of the absolute most important houses, and to see what rising you are, and you know, are there any planets in that house, and what are those planets, what are they situated like, are they in a good position, bad position, so we can determine how is life gonna umbrella you, or what's that going to look like.
Absolutely. You could determine so much. Now, you know, you might look at this and see, in a way, your life right in front of your eyes there, laid out for you to get a better understanding of why you decided to come in when you did. Because, again, everything is always changing. So, again, if you do want to get a Vedic astrology birth chart, natal chart done, you have to really know your time of birth. That is so key. If you don't know, well, I think it was around 6. Yeah, well, I think it's going to be about that. You know, it's, again, we need to know exactly the time, location, date, place to really get that clear picture. Some things, you know, might stay the same. Other things could definitely change. And so, again, you need to know that. What's fascinating, and I'll share with you guys a little bit that we've been uncovering. You know, I've been so blessed in this life to have such an amazing partner that's helped me to discover things. I feel like she was a direct answer to, like, things I put out there for the universe when I was very young, you know, saying, I remember being like, gosh, I was maybe 8 and thinking, you know, I'm not afraid of death, but I just want to know everything before I die. I was curious. I want to know everything before I die. You know, when you die, you might know a lot more than when you're in the body. But that's the way I was viewing it. I wanted to learn as much as I could before I died. That was really kind of the first thing. That was the primary goal that came into my mind. And really, when you look at my astrology chart and you look where my Jupiter and my Rahu is, it's all about knowledge. It's all about gaining knowledge. And so it makes an awful lot of sense. But through working with Cindy and deep meditation and uncovering things with the guides about my past lives and past the very last life, I am blessed to understand where I was born. I actually have the date and time and place of my previous incarnation directly before this, as well as the time of death and place of death. So it's very illuminating because, you know, Cindy's able to bring up different charts, and that's what we're going to also kind of talk about understanding these different charts. And it's what I wanted to share right here is just this. When you talk about charts, this particular chart, the D12 chart, will show you how your karma is coded into your DNA, ancestral karma. Isn't that fascinating? That line just hit me like a ton of bricks. Your karma is encoded in your DNA. Your karma is encoded in your DNA. It's like your programming. And again, it's all related to past lives. Like my last life, very different than this life, but it was a totally different purpose. It was kind of a life of exploring my innate desires of the very highest soul level. And it was a life of expression and in so many ways, really a life of just personal creativity and fun. But that was done also knowing that the next life is not going to be the same. And so in the previous life, never had to worry about bills, never had to worry about anything like that. Everything was taken care of. No real financial stresses or anything like that. And life was completely about just exploring in a creative sense. And that was a huge blessing. Now, for the first 40-something years of my life, in this life, it's been just work, and like most people, with a gradual shifting, especially when I turned 42. And can we touch on that just briefly about, like what's special about 42?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in Vedic astrology, that's, kind of where adulthood hits, or that's where you discover why you're here, or you at least have the desire to ask, why am I here? You start to understand that you're not going to be living forever. What is my purpose? What path should I be on? And all of that, it feels very, very much like a Saturn return. Everything hits you all at once. All of these life, codes, and you're trying to figure everything out. But that in Vedic astrology, that usually happens. I've seen it happen between like 36 and probably 46, but usually 42 on the nose. The people that we've worked with, they're like, oh, wow, yeah, that's when my life really did turn. That's when I did discover who I am, what I'm about, and what I'm here to do.
Absolutely. And also things like certain placements, like where Saturn is. Saturn holds sway in the first part of your life very strongly.
Right. Saturn, depending on where it's sitting, it's going to kind of dictate how hard you're going to work. It dictates your karma. Saturn's your karma. And luckily, what I've noticed with Saturn, I mean, a lot of people seem to be afraid of Saturn, but really Saturn is such a huge blessing because we learn the toughest but most important lessons through our Saturn placement. And in Vedic astrology, we actually use the moon to try to understand our emotions. The sun is our soul, but the moon is a reflection of the sun, and those are our emotions. So, and also in Vedic astrology, we look at all the planets. You don't just look at one sun sign. No. We look at all the planets to try to get a good understanding of where you're at. Now they say, they don't really like to do they like for you to wait until you're like 28 to get a full Vedic reading, because people don't really understand. They start to get an idea of who they are right around 28, but I've done charts for children just so the parents can know, okay, well, these are some things, these are going to be their strengths, this is going to be their weakness, these are things we need to keep an eye on, and these are things we probably should support them with.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at this particular chart, for instance, now Cindy's been delving into other charts lately in more depth. She's been doing the natal chart, which is really where you need to start with. You need to start with your natal chart to get a basic understanding. There's so much, like when you look at this chart right there, that's up in front of us. Your Rahu Ketu axis is an important thing to look at. Rahu and Ketu are the nodes of the moon. And one of them represents kind of like that passionate drive that can't get enough of something. The other one is sort of like been there, done that. And so, the antithesis of Rahu. Ketu is like the antithesis. It's actually represented as kind of a head on one side and then a headless body on the other side. And actually, if you go into the story, it's a demon where the head is cut off.
Yeah, there's a lot of demons in Vedic astrology. So, but Rahu, where we look at Rahu, that's where our passions lie. That's that driving force, that thing we just can't get enough of. What are we supposed to be working on in this life? And it's our obsession. And then Ketu is basically, that's our past life. That's, stuff that we've already done. So we're going to be kind of separated from wherever Ketu is sitting, but also there's going to be a level of spirituality, because Ketu is about separation of spiritual and material.
So, like, if I was again to ask you and say, like, if you look at somebody that has, say, Rahu and Mars and Moon in that first house, what does that look like?
One is really going to want to understand how their emotions work. I mean, to a level, this person's going to be pretty determined too.
Yeah. So very, very interesting. Now, again, then if you had, say, that in the 11th house, then what will we be looking at? The same three.
11th house is our hopes, dreams, and wishes. You're going to get whatever you want. You just need to apply.
Yeah, so this could tell you a lot. Your Rahu-Ketu axis, as we've touched on before as well, gives you a good idea as to what you should really focus on, because, again, we jump into this reality when it's going to give us the most opportune time to achieve certain goals. And these goals could be very different. Like, the goals that I have in this life are not the goals that I had in the past life. Like, when we look at my chart, from the last life, and if you still remember it, yeah, okay. So again, what would you say the goals were for that life? I mean, it comes across pretty obvious to you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, when we look at your D12, we have Mars, Saturn, Sun, and Moon all sitting in your first house of who you are. And then what did you do? Well, we look at the 10th house. 10th house is career, reputation. And you have Venus sitting there. So it's expressing yourself in the ultimate way possible, in such an artistic way, in a very loving way, in a very, Venus is that beauty, it's art, and you have so much power in your first house of yourself. Boy, that is a lot of power. And, we've been able to match up your past life with that. I thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly. And then also when we look at the so-called death chart there, and we look at the details, since we had the date of the death too, it showed that basically the goals for that life were achieved and understood. And so, it wasn't the longest life, it wasn't the shortest life, but the goals were achieved and the soul was ready to move on. Because again, I knew I had a date with this time period that had to be achieved as well. And so, there were several decades in between that incarnation and then this incarnation. As there still is always a need to process things on the other side, even when the passing is in a nice way, a natural way.
Right. There's a way. I used my intuition on the death chart of your past life. I looked to see where the mindset was. So we put in the date, the information, the place, the where, the time. And when I looked at the stars, I realized immediately by the time of death, you were enlightened. You had found a great deal of wealth in everything that came to you in that life. So it was really a very blessed passing, because everything was illuminated to you. You had the sun in your first house. So that says by the end of that life, you had reached an illumination. So that was really beautiful. And that's how I did that. Now, is that how you do a death chart? No, I don't know. I went and I used my intuition and I looked at the stars on that day, and that should be the mind pattern of the person or the influences that person was feeling on that date on that time.
And with this chart now, talk to us more about touching on this.
On our D12, this is our exit chart, 12th house. It's like cutting open the 12th house and dissecting it and figuring out what your past life was like. So everybody's a little bit different, and in this 12th house, this person obviously has a very strong sense of their self with Rahu sitting in their first house.
Yeah, so it is interesting too with the insight that we've gained from meditation, Cindy going into trance and getting information, and all the glimpses that I've gotten, that when we look at like the past life chart and where it ended and we look at my D12, they're congruous. So that's really, really cool. But it did raise some questions, because when we look at the D12 of my last incarnation, then it raises questions that got me wondering, oh, okay, so what was going on in that life? And again, in these other ages, this is not foreign. This is not speaking Greek or quantum physics. All this is really understood. Yet there is a purpose for the veiling of all the information from us, because again, if we went into a game with all the cheat codes, the game's just not going to be as much fun.
No, when you take a test, if you know all the answers, well, then it's no longer a test.
Absolutely. So again, this is all about the science of light and how it interacts in our lives. There's great purpose. Now, at this particular time, we've gotten that as much as 1/3 of the people on the planet right now, you could view them as guides and coaches for the 2/3 that are newer souls that have only really known incarnations here in the Kali Yuga on Earth. So, in many ways, these are younger souls that need guidance. And so, chances are the majority of you that are actually drawn to listen to stuff like this, it's because you've had many other incarnations. You are older souls. In many cases, you have incarnated in other places, other planets, other star systems. So many are from Lyra or Sirius, or, could be from Andromeda and other places as well. And you're here to help coach and cheer on the youngins, so to speak, the younger souls that are being taken advantage of by the controllers. And so one of the biggest things we could really understand is, okay, well, what is my particular purpose? Okay, so I'm to help. Well, help how? But then again, when you look at your chart, and when you look at your natal chart, when you start studying a chart like the D12, it'll give you a much clearer picture of what your purpose is. And you might have some things that have always been issues that pop up. Well, this is going to kind of tell you why. Like if you have, relationship issues and say everything is really fine, hey, I've had great jobs and now I'm an entrepreneur, and yeah, I don't worry about money. I'm able to travel, do all these things, but you know what? I haven't been able to have a long-lasting relationship. Well, again, it could be exactly where things are lined up in, on your chart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a purpose for that, and usually that's because in your last life you did nail the relationship thing with probably a spouse and many, many, many other people. So in this life, you are here to kind of give it a go on your own, give it a go alone. So things just keep not quite working out and can be very, very frustrating. There's, there is, like, when you're dealing with destiny, you can go for these things that seem impossible, but it just takes an enormous amount of energy. But you know what? If you feel that drive, then go for it.
Absolutely. And so again, this is a single incarnation amongst many. You could view, again, each incarnation is but chapters in the bigger book of the soul's experience.
There's those Akashic records, that has all of our information in them. And one life after the next, we take these experiences and they are already recorded, and we have access to those at any time, and we can work on those. I think, you know, we get to go through so many different revelations and aha moments. And those aha moments feel really, really good when we're here in the 3D and we finally get something, we understand something. That's just so rewarding. It's such a huge reward to finally have understanding, I think.
And the other chart that you've delved into quite a bit in recent times has been relationships.
There is a relationships chart. There is also the destiny chart, which I'm starting to dabble in right now. So that kind of tells people how their life is going to end up. But it's something I'm just sort of studying now.
Okay, well, we hope you guys found this interesting. There's so many things we can go into on this. Anybody that is interested in setting up a time for a chart, please do reach us at evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. Again, evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. Check out our website. It's, again, evolutionaryenergyarts.com. So pretty simple, pretty easy. Typically, to get a chart done, it's usually about 2 weeks or so, give or take. And if you just needed energy work, spiritual coaching, things like that, biofield tuning, that typically we could usually get you in maybe a week to 10 days. But again, just reach out. And everything we do is done with donations through Ko-Fi. There's information on the first page of evolutionaryenergyarts.com as to what people typically donate. And we do appreciate you guys. Please put down questions and let us know what you want to hear more of. What do you guys want to hear more of? Honestly, we do feel the need to cover the news and stuff, although obviously also every time you do the news and you deep dive into everything going on the planet, feels like you need to take a 2-hour bath and scrub it all off. We're talking about these things is just pure pleasure all day long. Things like astrology, our hidden history too. Love that. Energy work, meditation, and the like. That's just beautiful candy for the soul.
It's easy.
It is, and we love it, and it's just part of our big purpose. But we do also need to keep waking up others, because it's all in how many people we can wake up to change the paradigm as quick as possible.
Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.